episode of the Hoff Time report, or sometimes the hot time report, because like I'm sweating because I just walked back from a meeting. And even though it's a little bit on the cool side outside, I don't know, I'm just really hot. But welcome. And this is going to be a little bit different because we did have State Representative Brent Crane scheduled to be with us today, and he canceled at the last minute, saying that he had a conflict involving, I guess, a kid's ball game or something like that, which is fine. We'll have him back on the program again in the future. Well, we've had some legislators who canceled, just because they just don't want to talk to me. I don't think that's Brent, hopefully, but we have had some other ones who aren't terribly interested in participating in this process. And the reason why that is exemplified by what happened at the state legislature today, where the House Education Committee voted 8-7 to hold a education choice bill an education choice bill, pardon me, in committee. And that takes me back to the interview that I did with Lance Clow sitting across the table from me just a month or so ago. I guess it was a month ago. And I got a little bit frustrated with Clow, the chairman of the House Education Committee, because he sat there in the seat across from me and said, "Oh, I believe in education choice." And I knew that he was lying. I knew that the way he was talking, you just knew that something wasn't quite right. I've been in this business a long time. I've been interviewing and talking to politicians since 1987. So this is not my first rodeo, as it were. And so when we were talking, I was getting a little bit frustrated because he was talking about how supportive he was of education choice, and yet he was a bit defensive about the idea of pushing an education choice bill across the finish line during this legislative session. And this today proves my point and the reason why it was frustrating, because Lance Clow is in a position of power, says he's passionate about education choice, and yet for the last several years has refused to do anything to give Idaho school kids the same benefits that kids in other states have. West Virginia, Arizona, Oklahoma, and so on. These other states, the kids in other states have a lot more access to choice, and year after year after year, education choice proposals fail in the state legislature, a legislature that's composed of 85% Republicans. And then on top of that, last week I was at the Canyon County Lincoln Day and happened to run into a guy named Ryan Kirby, who's a state representative from New Plymouth. And Ryan says to me that and I don't know whether he was drunk or whatever, but he was kind of effervescent. He was very passionate, if you will, about the issue of education choice, telling me he would never, ever, ever support an education savings account bill like the one that was up in the committee today. And yet, when the bill was up in committee, he gave this long speech about how he supported 98% of what was in the bill, but decided to vote against it anyway. He actually said that. He said, "I support 98% of what this legislation does, this education savings account bill." He's lying. That's what we're up against at the Idaho legislature, this dishonesty. They tell you one thing and do another. Lance sat across the table from me, and I could tell that he was not being candid with me about his position. He said he supports education choice, and then he waffled about whether he was even going to give the bill a hearing, which finally he decided to give the bill a hearing. He was actually threatening to not give the bill a hearing just because he was mad at me over the interview. That tells you something. Oh, I'm really passionate about education choice, but I'm going to let my anger with you take away education choice from Idaho school children. But okay, so he gave a hearing, but he said up front, if it's a close vote or a tie vote, he wasn't going to break the tie to send the bill forward. And that's exactly what happened today. So this chairman of the House Education Committee, who sat across the table from me a month ago, claiming that he supports education choice, but equivocated on whether he was actually going to advance the bill, said he would not break the tie. And sure enough, when it came down to it, his vote would have made the difference. And he cast the deciding vote to hold um, the House Bill 669, I think is the number, in committee today. That was his vote. That's what happened at the state legislature today. The point of this conversation is to say to you, if you've never been involved in Idaho politics before, this is really, really hard work. And I say that because for many, many years, and I moved to Idaho in 1995, and the program is relatively the same election cycle after election cycle and legislative session after legislative session. These politicians go to Boise, they say, I'm, well, they go to Boise, they vote for big government, and they come back home and talk about how pro life and pro gun and pro business they are. And you're not supposed to ask many questions beyond that. So, my request to you is to do your research and to really investigate what it is the folks are doing, not what they're saying. And you may be pro life, and you may be pro gun, and you may even be pro business. And all those things are great. But it's the legislature is more than that. The legislature is a place where a lot of public policies get decided, and it's stuff that doesn't generate the headlines. For example, today, and you probably won't read this in the newspaper, but today, the House passed a bill that it's called Rule of 80. It basically lets certain government employees retire by the age 50. So if their age and their amount of service totals 80, they get to retire, and oftentimes that's when a person's 50 years old. That policy was designed for police officers and firefighters because they're out on the front line and they're running around with guns, and they to be in physical shape to manage that, or they might be have a big what do they call that, air tank on their back and all the heavy equipment. If you're a firefighter, it's hard, grueling work. At least that was the argument that was made for allowing um, police and firefighters to retire young, essentially. And the bill that passed the legislature, passed the House today, it'll be heard in the Senate next, and probably will pass there too, says if you're a dispatcher, you get the same benefit. And there's discussion and there's legislation pending as well that applies to juvenile corrections officers and misdemeanor probation officers also. And the argument that they're making is, well, it's a stressful job. Ultimately, you and I as taxpayers have to pay for that stuff, because when you add those people into the mix at Percy, the taxpayer are the guarantor for those programs. That is not a conservative policy, but you won't hear about those things. You really need to dig into the nuts and bolts of what's really taking place at the State House. And it is more than just people sitting around and voting against big government programs all day. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Many instances exist wherein the people you talk to say they're conservative, swear up and down they're conservative, and vote for bigger government. This is where our freedom index comes in. And if you watched the TV news last week, and Dustin's talked about it a little bit, Dustin and I both talked about it last week as well. Those um, uh, investigative reports don't really hit the mark on why the left is so scared of what it is we're doing. They're scared because for years they've gotten away, the legislators, have gotten away with selling you on this song and dance about how conservative they are. And now there's some accountability that didn't previously exist. So why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this because, well, you were gracious enough to tune in and watch the program, even though we don't have a guest tonight because he canceled. But I'm telling you this because now is the time to start paying attention. It's March. The candidate filing period is open. That means that there will be incumbents who are going to run again, and they're going to be asking for your vote. And then there are challengers who are going to run against them who will be asking for your vote. And it's more than just, it's more important than just asking, are you pro life? Are you pro Second Amendment? Do you believe that businesses shouldn't be regulated? Because, I mean, the state Senate just the other the state senate, which refused to convene last year willingly, they did after, they were compelled to do it, but they didn't want to convene under the argument that in a special session, they didn't want to convene because they claimed that they were against government regulation, and they didn't want to take up a bill that would tell businesses that they couldn't force people to get the COVID vaccination, right? This same state senate a few days ago passed a bill that said if you're an insurance provider, you must provide for free so many months of contraceptives to your insured patients. What is that? It's a regulation. That they're okay with. They're okay with that regulation. They're not okay with this other regulation, right? So basically, I wish I could be more plain about it. They lie to you. And then the media lies to you too about what they're really doing. So, all this to say that today really brings that into focus. Don't just listen to the speech that a legislator gives when they're about to vote on a bill, or the speech that they're going to give when they go attend Lincoln Day or some other community event, or when you see them in the grocery store. They tell you the same lie year after year because it sounds good. Oh, I'm pro education choice, but by golly, we didn't get to see the bill. Or well, I like education choice, but yeah, we just didn't see the right legislation, or there was something wrong with the bill that they saw. If only we saw a better bill, we would have voted for that. It's all bullshit. And I wish I could come on here and say it's not, but it is. It's bullshit. They lie to you. I've been doing this for years, and I'm tired of it. Today was a real opportunity to do something really marvelous for Idaho's young people, kids who are trapped in schools that don't meet their needs at all. If you had a business, and let's say you had a bunch of stores all over Idaho or all over the Northwest, and half the stores were failing, they weren't generating the revenue, or you were having significant attrition in the number of customers coming through the door, somebody would get fired. Not in Idaho. We just pour more money into the system and kind of hope and pray that things are going to get better. And then they go back home, and the legislators go back home and say, "Gosh, if only we could have done something about it." It's not right, and I'm kind of tired of it. We're not going to give up on pursuing education choice. In fact, today we had lunch with my staff, and we talked about how we were going to press on into 2023 into the next legislative session. Hope that conditions are more favorable for passage next year, but all that is water under the bridge. You can read more about what we were trying to accomplish at idahofreedom.org. But again, the bottom line is please do your research. Understand that you can't go to the state legislature's website and see a legislator's complete voting record. You have to click on every single bill to learn how a legislator voted for the sum total of their tenure at the Capitol. You can, however, go to idahofreedom.org and click on the Freedom Index, and you can see all their votes. And you can see how we scored their votes and why we scored them that way so that you can make your own informed decisions. But the point is, this is hard work. If you want to save America, you have to dig deeper and you have to ask more difficult questions. Because if this stuff that we have going on right now is allowed to continue, it will be the demise of our country. The left control the leftists control our K-12 system, and they control our higher education system. And the media don't want you to know that, and legislators don't want you to know that either, but it's true. And so you have to be super informed, and being informed today requires more than it did even 5 years ago, at least back 5 years ago, maybe you could pick up a newspaper and read some things, and maybe you'll take it with a grain of salt. Now you can't even read anything and consider it to be a legitimate source for news. So that means the work is on you. The other thing that two more things. One is tomorrow, the House Senate Budget Committee, the Joint Finance Appropriations Committee, is meeting to take up the college and university budget. And we're anticipating that the budget will pass through there without any changes to rein in social justice indoctrination. So if you do one thing tomorrow, and I've told people this, make it a habit. Call your legislator, write your legislator, text your legislator, email your legislator, whatever. Do it every day and let them know that you're watching what's going on. But I guarantee you, almost guarantee you, it's like a 95% certainty, maybe even more than that the budget committee is going to pass a bill that does not hold the colleges and universities accountable for the social justice indoctrination they've been doing, despite the fact that the legislature last year cut $2.5 million, not a huge amount of money, wasn't a huge lift, and said schools get rid of $2.5 million worth of this stuff. They haven't done that. All the programs that existed before are still in existence. The LGBTQ center, the various gender equity centers, the oh my gosh, there's so many things. There's the diversity officers, the legions of them that work in the college system that we as taxpayers and students as fee and tuition payers finance this stuff. They're using our money to finance this stuff. So please contact your legislators and tell them that you're not having any of that, that you want to see more done. Because if Idaho can't rein in the left, who can? In Wyoming, the legislature over there is considering legislation to get rid of the various gender studies programs. What's Idaho doing? Nothing so far. So I'm really, really counting on people to participate, to engage. If you're engaged and you're serious about this and you are doing the work and you're writing letters, call your friends, call your neighbors, have them send emails. The more the merrier. And then finally, tomorrow night, if you're in the Boise Valley area or the Twin Falls area, we're doing a telephone town hall meeting, and you'll be getting a phone call. You should be getting a phone. Maybe you already got a phone call. I did, inviting you to participate in that because we're going to spend a lot of time debunking the KTVB news report on us, the four-part series on how terrible the Freedom Foundation and Idaho Freedom Action are, and also answering questions. So if you've never had a chance to have your questions answered about who we are, what we do, and why we do it, there's your chance. So look forward to you joining us for that. And then I gotta see who is joining us. Hopefully, I'll just look at my phone. Very professional because I don't remember who we have coming in. Today is Tuesday, right? So on Thursday, we will be having find it here in a second. Oh, Carrie Hanks will be here. Representative Carrie Hanks from St. Anthony. Great gal, wonderful conservative vote in the state legislature. We'll ask her some really interesting questions about the state of affairs over there in the House of Representatives now that she's seen how locked down public policy making is. It's an oligarchy over there, folks. It's an oligarchy. If you don't know what an oligarchy is, look it up and then tell me I'm wrong about the state house and how it operates. But I'm right. It is definitely a political operation that is controlled by a few people, and all these other, the bulk of the 105 people who get elected there don't matter because they have no say and they seem to be perfectly happy with that, which is unfortunate. Anyway, that's all I got for tonight. Thank you again for tuning in, and we will talk to you again later. Bye-bye.